So I'd like to invite Louise up here. If you, Louise O'Donnell, if you would, Louise, come and share your Al Pretty moments and share with us your work. Louise O'Donnell.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Well, first, I'd like to thank Conrad, first of all, for inviting me, and second of all, for doing this wonderful event. I mean, both the Millennium Trail and the A-frame, which I can't think of anything to honor Al more than to make the A-frame into a writer's retreat. It's just... Anyway, I first turned on to Al's poetry when my daughter brought his book, The Caribou Horses, home from school. Wow, different from anything I had learned in school, and I was hooked. But I lived in Toronto, and never did I expect to find myself in Purdy country. However, I did. We moved here in 1990. And one of the early events we attended was a reading at the Ameliasburg Library. After the reading, I was really very, very touched. And I went home and I wrote this poem. After an Al Purdy reading. We went to the reading last night, sat in the semicircle of orange chairs, semicircle of silver heads in the Ameliasburg Library, with books corralled by the back wall, their dog ears perked to hear if your splendiferous words would pale their pages. And you were Merlin, transporting us on your crackly voice into worlds well familiar to us all, no longer pedestrian when lived through your insights. 30 minutes passed in an eye blink, yet we traveled around continents, returning with smiles and lighter hearts, and it was done. Reluctant to crack the fragile shell of this evening, spill its delicate contents on the mundanity of tomorrow's lunch preparations, we take the circuitous route back to Wellington, inch our way through the soft county night. A horse, then another appears, misty shapes in a black field. In the distance, neon flash of eyes. A family of deer sculpt a tableau in our headlights before melting into the night sky. In poetry's private language, stars twinkling in the distance become their eyes. That's Al. Al was with me that night. I ran into Al a few times at different events, but I never really had any personal contact with him. Al was a friend of my friend, my friend was Janet Lund, and I knew much about Al's going-ons from Janet. Anyway, over the next while, I did many readings around the county. But when Prince Edward County Arts Council decided to present an event called Words Are Music with Al Purdy, Stephen Heighton, the Frere brothers, and me, you can imagine, I was, to say the least, nervous. I'd heard that Al could be quite frank in his assessment of other people's work. However, it went well, and Al never said a word. The next encounter with Al came at the first Prince Edward County Authors Festival, an event which took place at Mount Tabor Playhouse in Milford. We were both reading, but at different times. Al and Urith had set up a table to sell books on the lawn outside, so I felt secure that he would be outside and I had nothing to worry about. I confidently started my reading, and I looked to see Al in the doorway. Oh, damn. Surely it's just popping in to see how long it will be before people will be coming to buy books. I continued. He took a seat. To make a long story short, he stayed for the entire reading. And when it was over, he walked up to the front and said in his gravelly voice, "I like your stuff, and you read it well." He turned to sell books, and I floated for the rest of the evening. I tell you this because there was the other side to Al's gruff reputation. However, after Al died, the Quinte Arts Council hosted a memorial for him at Albert College, a school he attended in his early days, and I was asked to read at that point. Sam Selecki had written a book about Al. It was called The Last Canadian Poet. Here is the poem I read that night. It's called G.L. G.L., Selecki says you were the last Canadian poet. Oh, I know what he was getting at. I've read the book. But I hope he's wrong. And I don't think you'd want that either. I just can't see you floating around out there, your fists up, defending your laurel crown. Fists up, maybe. But I can't imagine those big feet poised to stomp on the pen of some young kid who's just starting to scribble lines, perhaps waxing eloquent about her love affair with this vast, multicolored land. No, I don't think so. Rather, I see you bent double. You can do that now. No reneging bones to bring you up short. Yes, I see you whispering into that youthful ear, your hoarse voice urging her, or him, to keep it up, to go out and know the land, to rest her hands on pink granite, feel how the sun toasts it. You're telling her to climb Mount Edith Cavell, see how in the distance mountains rise like a regiment of soldiers, one behind the other. You'll send her to stand by a field of prairie wheat, watch the wind roll it like waves on the ocean. You'll tell her to sit in a courtroom, watch 50 earnest faces swear allegiance, hear broken English voices swell to the strains of our anthem. Perhaps you'll send her to sit with the Gastown junkies, or to Newfoundland shore among racks of empty nests, or to watch Canada geese fly home in spring, or the monarchs take off from Presqu'île as they head across the lake and on to Mexico. Perhaps you'll send her to stand on foreign soil, hear, for whatever reason, a band strike up, "O Canada." No, while I believe you spoke for us all, I want to believe you won't be the last. I want to believe that you are still around somewhere, urging that kid to court this land like a suitor, helping her or him to compose love letters to this country, lines for all the world to read. And I'm going And I'll finish with one of Al's poems. It's called Prince Edward County. Words do have smell and taste. These have the taste of apples, brown earth and red tomatoes, as if a juggler had juggled too many balls of fire and dropped some of them. A smell and taste and bell sound in the ear of waves, not princes. Conservative since the Romans, although it's only animals that are true conservatives, using the same land and water and air for countless generations, themselves their own ancestors, each their own child. Rabbits and groundhog tenants, porcupine leaseholders, and the wide estate of foxes. This is an island, and you know, it's like being dressed in lace, as only a woman may be, and not laughed at. Around her neck and throat, the silver dance of coastlines and bells rung deep in limestone. Animals having no human speech have not provided names, but named it with their bodies, and the long ago pine forests named it with their bodies, and the masts of sailing ships around the centuries' turn named it to the sea. And a bird one springtime named it bobolink. Bobolink. Even a small, unremarkable flower I saw last April blossoming that died shortly after named it for herself, Trillium. And we, the latecomers, white skins and brown men, no voice told us to stay, but we did for a lifetime of now and then forever. The fox and flower and rabbit and bells rung deep in limestone for any who come after. You have heard our names and the word we made of silence, bobolink. And thank you.